Hey guys, I'm sure it is an understatement to say we God of War fans are beyond speechless right now. We've been given a 3-minute trailer packed with content with a lot of details easy to miss even after watching the trailer several times. Before we start, my goal is to reach 5,000 subscribers before God of War Ragnarok is released, so if you could take the time to like and subscribe, it would honestly mean the world to me. Also, if like me you love everything God of War related, why not consider becoming a member? There's no obligation, but if you do, it is affordable with perks such as being added to a members only Discord, where you can discuss everything God of War related, join me for future live Q&As on YouTube, and be given a shout out at the end of videos. With that out of the way, let's begin. The trailer begins with Atreus seemingly casting runic magic, presumably in the Wildwoods where they live, similar to how Faye put a protection stave which kept the father and son hidden in Midgard and beyond. To me, it looks like Atreus' powers are starting to manifest now as he gets older. Kratos is then seen surrendering his weapons, which likely symbolizes surrendering to someone, perhaps Odin. It's interesting to note both Atreus and Mimir are missing, which makes me think they've been captured. There are other scenes within the trailer too, which the characters are missing. Based on the frozen terrain in the background, I believe this is the Wildwoods where their house is. However, the house looks different, implying it was rebuilt after being destroyed. Lastly, Kratos drops his axe beside the pouch that once held Faye's ashes. In the next scene, Kratos is using his blades to free an imprisoned Tyr, who is the god of war in the Norse lands. As for why the blades specifically, it may be Tyr was bound by a spell, and as we know, the blades are from a foreign land, explaining why they worked in Helheim. That same logic may apply here too. Tyr says, "I know you," following with Godkiller, implying he knows of Kratos' past beyond the 9 realms. Moving on, Tyr can be seen with Atreus and Kratos in Alfheim, meaning that the scene we saw of Kratos in the house earlier is likely later in the game. Tyr says, "What is it you want from me?" It seems to me Tyr's been tortured so much by Odin that he has lost the will to live, so to speak. It also seems Tyr is oblivious to Kratos' plan, meaning he has been isolated from the outside world to the point where he's unaware of the current state of it. As for the figure in the background, this is likely a light elf. Whether it is a leader of sorts is unconfirmed, but visually looks like a regular light elf. He uses the elf's weapon, but this is likely only a finisher, in the same way this finisher was used in 2018. Also, notice in the background we can see Tyr hunching over, as if unable to walk. Initially I thought this would be an escort mission, but we did see him walking fine in the previous scene. Maybe he got injured in Alfheim. After all, we can assume he is already in a weakened state, as he was likely imprisoned for years. Tyr also says, "Is it a god of war you came to find?" showing almost hopelessness, that only a fragment of that title exists within Tyr now, if even that. We then see Tyr dragging a dead light elf, meaning the light elves we freed in 2018 are hostile towards us. In the next scene, Odin shows up at their house in the Wildwoods. Note how Atreus opens the door. I believe this was a calculated visit from Odin to exploit Atreus for his own benefit, knowing Kratos would be away. There can also be parallels drawn here. Originally, Odin's son Baldur showed up in 2018, and now Odin has visited in the same manner. My guess is this is earlier in the game, just like Baldur's surprise visit in 2018. Now, I don't want to give you guys hope without solid grounds, but this is promising to suggest we might briefly play as Atreus. Odin says to Kratos, "You don't really want war, do you, Kratos? All that blood on your hands, on your son's hands," implying Kratos is trying to distance himself from conflict. However, Odin's using psychological tricks for his benefit. By the way, everything Odin says is likely separate from what the scenes are showing, meaning these are likely segments from a dialogue between Kratos and Odin. In the following scene, a mural gleams before Atreus, depicting soldiers and a leader figure. The runes on the shields suggest that they are from all over the realms. The leader figure looks to have feminine characteristics, making me believe it is Freya, as also depicted here from 2018. Kratos, Mimir and Tyr are also present in this scene. Atreus is then seen, likely in the Wildwoods cabin, curiously inspecting a similar ball to that we saw in the reveal trailer, which had the word Hati on it. While it is hard to make out what it says here, it's safe to assume it says Skull. These are of course the wolves Skull and Hati, who are destined to chase the sun and moon. I will speak more about the wolves later in the video. Kratos says, "What is it you will not tell me?" This is the first time seeing him making a plea to Atreus, as opposed to the more detached Kratos we saw in 2018. Atreus follows up by saying, "I can't talk about it, but I need you to trust me." You may ask, what is he hiding? I believe it is most definitely Odin's visit. Odin must have cunningly manipulated Atreus to keep the visit a secret. I also believe Odin gave Atreus the ball with Skull etched on it, as it somehow plays into his plan. I don't believe there is any malicious intent in hiding the secret from Kratos, and that Atreus merely wants to protect him. Moving on, in this depiction on the left, we can see an imprisoned Tyr, and on the right, Tyr leads with wolves, Skull and Hati. The world tree is also depicted with all the realms, however, Jotunheim is crossed out. I believe these represent 3 individual events, and we're on track to fulfilling the last prophecy, as we visited Jotunheim and freed Tyr. Kratos then says, "We follow your every whim," to which Atreus says, "But you don't believe in any of it." Kratos then stresses, "and I still follow," meaning Atreus has been taking the lead, also implying Kratos still doubts the prophecy's authenticity, which makes sense considering his hate towards the concept of fate. The dialogue between the father and son ends with Kratos saying, "Because all that matters is that you are safe," to which Atreus replies, "But that's not all that matters, who's keeping you safe?" Kratos dismissively and passively says, "I do not need you to protect me." Atreus ends by saying, "You sure about that?" Atreus is clearly showing concern for Kratos, and again it seems to me Odin has painted a false picture of what is really happening. We then see Atreus bound by Freya, who has used Vanir magic on him. She takes the mistletoe from him, the same mistletoe that took away Baldur's invulnerability. Either she is going to reanimate Baldur's body so as wanting to protect him for the future, or she's going to take the mistletoe simply as a reminder of the most painful day in her life to fuel her rage for father and son. Based on the background, this is a frozen Midgard, which makes sense considering Freya lives in Midgard. In the next scene, we are in what I believe is the realm between realms. Not only that, I'm going to say this is the primordial realm, Ginnungagap, where Ymir, the first giant and primordial, was born. This is also a confirmed place on the official map. In Norse mythology, when Muspelheim came in contact with Niflheim, it gave birth to Ymir, the first being. That point of contact occurred at the location Ginnungagap, one of the 3 places that existed before the creation of the realms and gods. It would then also be accurate to refer to this as the cosmos, because it could be viewed as the center point of existence, comparable to the Big Bang. In the same scene, 2 Valkyries are seen attacking the duo. One of the Valkyries is called Hurst, calling Kratos pretender god and chanting for the Allfather, meaning these Valkyries are still under a spell cast by Odin, which corrupts them, unlike the Valkyries we freed in 2018 from Odin's spell. Kratos says, "Death can have me when it earns me." I see this as foreshadowing of Kratos dying, but let me make a quick distinction. Having implies to own. Kratos may die, but I believe would re-emerge as he has numerous times in the past. By the way, it was Orion Walker that wrote that line. Absolutely phenomenal line, I think one of the best lines in God of War in my opinion. So guys, go onto Twitter, thank Orion, thank the entire team, because they're doing a brilliant job honestly. Kratos is then seen hanging off of a ledge while the Valkyries beat Atreus. Perhaps he activated Spartan Rage to save Atreus, and maybe Odin commanded them to imprison him. Moving on, the duo fight a large monster, and judging by the terrain, this is Svartalfheim. It's also interesting to know that the Guardian Shield has a different centerpiece, which makes sense if it has been upgraded. There isn't much to talk about in this Helheim scene, but we can see new Hel enemy types. Kratos and Atreus are then fighting the Dark Elves in Alfheim. I will speak more about this later in the video. Also, note how we've never seen this shield modification before. This could be either a variation of the Stonewall shield, which I mentioned in a previous video, or it could be another shield type entirely. Onwards, the father and son are in a flying carriage of some sort. I predict this will act as another form of transportation. It's confirmed we're flying, since when Kratos threw this monster from the carriage window, we can see the environment below us. In the next scene, a knightly figure is fighting Kratos in a forest. This may well be Vanir, but I'm betting this is an Asgardian enemy type belonging to Odin's army. Kratos then bridges the distance with the blades, a clear callback to this move from previous God of War games. This is another effective way to add verticality to movement in combat, as Kratos then follows up with an axe slam. Although both weapons are used in conjunction, I wouldn't say it confirms dual wielding, but certainly could be the case. Judging by the same environment, these enemies are also part of Odin's army. Moving on, I did want to bring to your attention what I believe is a callback to a deleted scene from 2018. This may well just be a finisher move and nothing more, but remember this scene from the reveal? But of course, this time around, Atreus doesn't miss his target. Also, since the environment hasn't changed, I'd assume this is a monster native to Asgard. Next, in this scene, there are 3 details to point out. Firstly, notice the flag with an insignia, likely representing Odin's army, and note the statue which may well be a shrine to an Aesir deity. Lastly, a new mechanic is shown for the blades, likely acting as a wide radius long range attack. We finally get a glimpse at the previously visited realm of Muspelheim. While the enemy appears faceless, I believe this is in fact Kratos going through a trial of Surtur the Fire Giant who is testing him. Perhaps a trial to ensure Surtur's alliance with Kratos? The rune doesn't say anything in particular, but if we're taking individual runes down, perhaps it spells out a word. Odin returns with his manipulative strategy, this time saying, "What do you even know of godhood? In your lifetimes, has anyone ever worshipped you, ever prayed to you? Can you even imagine that kind of love? No. You don't care about anything beyond yourself, beyond the monster who kills without cause." Again, Odin is employing mind tricks to have Kratos questioning whether he has truly moved on from the monster he was. We can see Kratos bloodied after a battle, looking remorseful and perhaps contemplating whether he's still that monster everyone feared him as. Okay, this scene is shrouded in a lot of mystery. Initially, I thought this was Tyr or Angrboda, but upon closer look, it's neither. However, I believe I've identified who this is. Someone is employing Vanir magic to manipulate the environment around us, who I believe is Freya. It would also not be a stretch to assume that this may well be Vanaheim, so I'm going to predict that this is none other than Freyr, Freya's brother. Another promising sign of this theory is that a Dark Elf is aiding us by fighting on our side. meaning Kratos has likely taken Freyr upon allying with the Dark Elves, and Freyr or the Vanir are retaliating. After all, not only is Freyr the leader of the elves, but likely the leader in Vanaheim too, since Freya was bound to stay in Midgard. Moving on, based on the collapsing rocks around us, the pair are likely being chased as Kratos tries to rescue Atreus and flee. I believe it's none other than Freya following us. It's very easy to miss, but in the last few frames we see a particle effects animation, similar to that of Freya transforming from a bird back to human form and vice versa. This again is located in Midgard, based on the frozen environment. Atreus is then rescued by Kratos from underwater. Now, this in itself doesn't confirm an underwater level, however a scene later almost certainly confirms it. Earlier in the video I mentioned the significance of the ball with the word skull etched on it, which I believe Odin gave to Atreus. Here the father and son are accompanied by Skull and Hati overlooking the sun setting. I believe those objects allow Atreus to command the wolves. Upon launching an arrow, Skull chases the sun. It's important to note that the act itself of chasing the sun and moon doesn't signify the start of Ragnarok. It's rather when the wolves catch the sun and moon that Ragnarok begins. Meaning, while this is only a theory, this scene may be from another timeline, because we know Skull and Hati from our timeline are already chasing the sun and moon. Of course, it could be argued since he's in control of the wolves, he may have commanded them earlier to stop and now restart, but I have my doubts on that. I also initially thought that they may be hinting at a day and night cycle with gameplay implications, but now I believe that that is unlikely after reconsidering its story significance. Kratos is then seen standing beside the light of Alfheim, which I believe is a very promising sign we will see Faye. It may also be Kratos trying to speed up time for whatever reason, or needs to consult Faye with the given circumstances, as of course time flows faster in the light than it does in Midgard. Moving on, we then see a sea creature who I believe is native to Svartalfheim due to the environment around us. It seems to me this is Darlin's room, which would mean it is built underwater in Svartalfheim, allowing him to overlook the sea life, or it may be a ship with windows located below. In the following scene we see a frozen tree, which I believe is again located in the realm between realms. The area's significance is again shrouded around mystery, but I do have two theories. This may be the tree Odin hung himself at for knowledge. Not only that, potentially other people have tried the same. My reasoning for this theory is the ravens surrounding it. It may well be each raven signifies the soul of the people that hung themselves there, which distinguishes the ravens from Odin's standard green or black ravens. As for why it's hidden away in the realm between realms, perhaps it allows access to a certain state or realm, making it a sacred or powerful area best left hidden. My second theory is that these are not ravens, but rather birds that represent Fae and or the Jotnar. In God of War 2018, the colour gold was associated with Fae, and that's how part of the visual language was established. Just like Fae is present in the light of Alfheim, maybe a part of her is also present here. Earlier I also mentioned my theory of underwater levels returning. Firstly, let's establish where this is. A large jellyfish emerges, which I believe is underwater in Alfheim, due to the light of Alfheim beaming in the background. The camera seems to be independently moved by the player, which I'm convinced means underwater levels will be returning in some capacity. Next, Tyr looks to have saved Kratos by grabbing onto one of the blades. If you look at the background, this is Alfheim, meaning this is around the time they entered Alfheim earlier in the trailer. It may also be since Tyr is the god of war in these lands, he can somehow utilize the powers of the blades, like Kratos. This is merely a theory, but food for thought. And of course, this also symbolizes an alliance between the gods of war. Kratos says, "Fate only binds you if you let it. Do what is necessary, not because it is written, we will make our own destiny." Again, Kratos has never believed in following a predefined fate, and rather creating your own, a clear callback to his time in Greece. Which is another reason Kratos has been doubtful of the prophecies in the Nine Realms. And lastly, arguably the most exciting part of the trailer, Kratos and a towering Thor is fighting in the Lake of Nine in Midgard. Based on the lifeless sky, I believe at this point in the story, Skull and Hati have already caught the sun and moon, meaning Ragnarok has begun. As a result, I'd bet this fight is located towards the end of the game. We've also learned that Thor recalls Mjolnir by clicking his fingers as opposed to Kratos using his whole hand. Also, Leviathan was made to rival Mjolnir, which is clearly the case as both weapons struggle to overpower each other. And note, while Atreus is quite noticeably missing, so is Mimir. We can only imagine what happened to them. Maybe they were captured or in another timeline. That a bit covers the trailer's breakdown. I'm sure there are details I may have missed, so feel free to comment your thoughts and theories below. You can definitely expect more videos on this trailer. Once again, my goal is to reach 5,000 subscribers before Ragnarok, so if you could subscribe and leave a like, that would honestly mean a lot to me. As always, thanks for watching and I hope to see you all soon. Take care.